Hey, Connecticut, I'd like to describe how Chris Murphy's involvement with Scott Bates led to this war that we are currently in. And if you can hang on, I'm going to try to show you through other people's documentaries, which may add credibility to what I'm trying to say. Because in the end, I'm going to sum up what happened and how it is treason, okay? So, listen carefully to Dan Bongino.
Ukraine was a piggy bank. Biden was Obama's point man in Ukraine. The Obama-Biden embassy is working with the Soros team. They're all collecting paychecks from this. One of the groups is targeting Soros' business opponent, right? Biden's son works in Ukraine. Biden wants a piece of this money. We know his son is funneling money to Biden because the business partner has already indicated as much, Tony Bobulinski. A prosecutor in Ukraine figures this thing out, starts looking into Hunter Biden's company and corruption in the Ukrainian government. Biden doesn't want that because Biden wants the cash cow to continue. I played this clip numerous times, but there's an extended version of this that you need to see. It's about 20.
This is how it involves Connecticut, okay? The bribery, the Council on Foreign Relations, everything is critically important here in what 22 states did to cause election fraud.
80 seconds longer. He cites a guy named Michael at the end of this. It's on C-SPAN. Matter of fact, show the clip first. There's a screenshot of it. It even says, user clip, Biden Carpenter. The guy on stage with him at the end is a guy by the name of Michael Carpenter, as Biden tells the Council of Foreign Relations, like an idiot, that he had the prosecutor looking.
Here we go. Biden has a guy on his left. Biden has a guy on the right. The guy on the right is the Council for Foreign Relations. Look on the wall here. Council for Foreign Relations. This is how they did the election fraud, folks. And the people interacting from Connecticut are not registered as foreign actors. They can't negotiate in these countries on behalf of the United States when in fact it's treason. There's no protection for these people. So listen, because Michael Carpenter is on Biden's left. You'll see.
Into his son's company in Ukraine, fired in exchange for money. Remember Daria Kalaniuk, who has the same interests as Biden, saying, oh, a lot of dirty money in Ukraine.
A lot of dirty.
Watch the clip. Listen to him cite Michael at the end, and I'll tie this thing all together for you. Check this out.
I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they did.
Now, this is after Murphy, U.S. Senator Murphy from Connecticut, had the president of Ukraine removed over treatment of protesters that were against the democratically elected president of Ukraine.
So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, what, 6.
So this is influence peddling. In other words, Hunter's gathering the money. Biden's a partner. And it gets ugly because what Chris Murphy did was threaten the Ukraine president that if Biden was investigated on behalf of Trump, that he would withdraw all congressional support for Ukraine, which is exactly what he's doing right now in Israel.
6 hours. I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
There we go.
At the time.
This is Michael Carpenter, and this is the Counsel for Foreign Relations guy.
Well, there's still, they made some genuine, substantial changes institutionally and with people. But one of the three institutions There's now some backsliding. Yes, and they had made that commitment that they wouldn't do that. And so when we left, the first thing I spent a lot of time, as did Mike, because this was his territory as well, and people like Charlie Kupchan and Victoria. And anyway,
Victoria Newland, friends with Chris Murphy.
So he says at the end, wow, unbelievably, again, this clip is so unbelievable how the media has largely ignored Joe Biden admitting to an international influence peddling scheme in exchange for U.S. taxpayer dollars, admitting it on video. He cites Mike at the end. He says, and Mike, this is his territory too. That's Biden's guy. Well, the guy on stage, if you look, is Michael Carpenter. Who's Michael Carpenter? Holy Moses, wouldn't you note?
That's where the Penn Center comes in. So the stolen documents of Biden on Ukraine implicate Biden and Hunter Biden. And Michael Carpenter is working with various parties. Here he is, American diplomat, United States ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. They no longer have an ambassador, folks. The position is empty. But when you go through the data, you will see. Here, this is the guy on the right, Counsel for Foreign Relations. Dictating policy, headquartered in New York. Independent? No. Nonpartisan? No. They are involved with the election fraud. Okay? When you look at the data, here's the biography of Scott Bates. Let me show you. Here he is talking about NATO relations. Here he is coming back from Jordan. Here he is, his biography. NATO relations. Coming back from Jordan. What's important? Here's his dossier. On the Secretary of State's website, representing the Homeland Security Committee. Scott Bates works for Chris Murphy, okay? U.S. Senator Murphy. Led a team on Homeland Security issues. Scott Bates forced Connecticut to register 800,000 illegals to vote. Then he mailed them an unsolicited ballot. Unfortunately, the ballots did not contain all the candidates. Scott Bates committed election fraud. And this is his historical profile. He went to Iraq, he went to Afghanistan, where they left $85 billion for the Taliban. He worked for Kosovo, Bosnia, Haiti, which is now in turmoil, Persian Gulf, okay, Iran, Iraq, Israel. He is involved in international relations. He holds a JD. He works for Chris Murphy. Now, this is what he did. He claims, okay, he worked with the United Nations, and right now, the United Nations, the National Security Council, is going to force Israel to abide to a ceasefire, which they won't do, which will lead to Chris Murphy defunding Israel. Okay? That's what his plan is. And here we go. Bates went to Afghanistan to support the establishment. Come on. Afghanistan was a disaster. The pullout and the $85 billion to the Taliban is a disaster. Here. Secondly, Scott Bates on election security. The meeting between the Department of Homeland Security and state election officials. Scott's the guy that forced them to register 800,000 illegals. Period. Bates organized and led the Connecticut Election Cybersecurity Task Force. They had access to the codes. They had access to the Serbian programming. Bates worked for Tong, worked for Blumenthal, falsified the elections, through Tyler Technology contracts and Gartner Group contracts and Bart Stanko, other people, all involved in the connection in the documents of the election fraud case being heard at the appellate court right now. It was just, our last date was 3/4. We had a hearing with 3 judges. He's also involved in green energy. The windmill pier, Connecticut pier job is a disaster. You can go, you can read everything on the guy. Basically, the drop boxes, no excuse absentee ballots, and cybersecurity, which he's in charge of. Read all his experience. I'll tell you why. I'm going to lead up to that. Here he did what he did. Transformed national and international government policy, including elections, international relations. He's a progressive. Lee Elsey talks about him all the time. Secretary of State Kohler, Deputy Secretary Scott Bates, Deputy Secretary under Mark Kohler, who committed fraud. And you can read Bisowitz. They have discussions about the Electoral College votes. They're talking about, the possible popular vote. There's Mark Kohler. There's Scott Bates. There's Susan Bisowitz. You can look, you can read about various federal judges involved, who they recognize. It's a disaster, folks. We're talking here about OSCE, which is very important. There's tons of information on Scott Bates, but this is the important part. Let me show you. Right here. This is a video I did about Scott Bates committing perjury.
J.D. Kimberly Massacat has committed treason. For sure. Here is a memorandum in support of a motion. Wow. Defendant Deputy Secretary of State Scott Bates, memorandum in support of his motion to dismiss. What does he talk about? Plaintiff seeks an injunction prohibiting Deputy Secretary from destroying the cast vote record.
Here we go. He destroyed the cast vote record. He says it can't be generated by the state of Connecticut. Cast vote records come from ES&S, Diebold, and the GEM system. All 3 have Connecticut contracts. All 3 are in force. The GEM system is connected to the central tabulators. There are 4. The GEM system is connected to UConn, which does the audit. Scott Bates had the audit documents destroyed to cover up the election fraud, which we are alleging. The fact that there is no cast vote record means that Scott Bates can't certify the election. Okay? Treason. Covering up spoliation of public disclosure documents. So all the FOIA I've ever done, all the subpoenas, over 65 subpoenas denied, are for Scott Bates to be able, along with 22 other states, to destroy all the evidence of the falsified election making Biden president. So not only is Scott Bates destroying the evidence, he has destroyed the ability of the state to certify the elections. Therefore, none of our elected officials are elected, A. B, none of them have immunity because their elections have never been certified. And since the software they signed, like e-poll books, is connected to the internet, now we have Republicans and Democrats alike across the state lying, telling people, oh, there's no evidence of voter fraud, when in fact there's probably 50 types of voter fraud occurring in Connecticut, including Act Blue fraud, campaign finance fraud. People in Connecticut are voting in as many as 45 other states. It's all well known. There's a long list of these of voters that vote in other states. The voter roll is not being cleaned because of CISA. Scott Bates is the connection. Eric is the connection Scott Bates uses not to clean the voter roll, to actually destroy the voter roll with illegal voters. Now he's destroyed the vote tally, which is the cast vote record. We needed that for the audit. Therefore, it is treason, because candidates that ran that got votes were zeroed out. The ability of the software that Tong is using, signed by Susan Bisowitz, signed by David Kohler, gives them the ability to not only change the votes through a phone app, a simple modem, or a thumb drive. Any simple thumb drive can change the outcome of an election, just like this little thumb drive. It takes about 30 seconds. Once you have the thumb drive and access to the tabulator, now there's 211 people that have the source code, which is from Serbia, which is hackable. They created backdoors. It's been proven in other states. We have the same software. It is Scott Bates who committed treason, destroying the cast vote record. It's all on the court record in the Linda D'Alessio case. It's very important, folks. So there we go. I can continue and show you more evidence, but what is important is if you listen to Dan Bongino, the Counsel of Foreign Relations, okay, CISA, Eric, Michael Carpenter interacts with Scott Bates. They're following instructions. How could 22 states that have questionable results in their elections all have a destroyed cast vote record? That means there is a conspiracy to destroy the evidence that was needed to certify the election. Since the election's not certified, they have no immunity, and therefore they're not entitled to any protections from the state. And I thank you very much for listening. I wanted to make the connection between Scott Bates destroying the cast vote record and Dan Bongino working with the Counsel of Foreign Relations, who's a defendant in the Connecticut case. Oh, there's a lot of defendants. There's 114 now. So we're waiting for Judge Meyer to continue to commit treason, and we think there are indictments pending. There are over 1,500 sealed indictments in the state of Connecticut dealing with election fraud. So there you go. We're hoping they have already picked up Blumenthal. We hear he's wearing a collar. We now are told he's a snitch, confidential informant, that he's allowed to operate as a U.S. senator after interfering in an extortion attempt recently, which is recorded, not by him, but others. And then we have other text messages which are completely troubling, which I haven't discussed at any length. Have a great day.